Okay, and then turn it over to Jacob Payne with Community Development to get us started.
Thanks, Shauna. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jacob Payne. I'm a senior planner with the City of Tempe Planning Division and Community Development Department. Thank you again for joining us today for the community kickoff meeting for the Diablo Double Butte Character Area, also known as Character Area 2. So today we're going to start off with our introductions, which is where we're at, and then we'll talk a little bit about character area planning, go into the purpose and the process that goes along with that. We'll look at this character area from a 30,000-foot view, talk a little bit about demographics, employment, and then we'll talk about visioning. And this is where we'll ask some questions to get your gears spinning about things you like about the community and things you want to see continue or improve. And then we'll get on to next steps and timeline, and we'll open it up for some question and answer. So again, I'm Jacob Payne, Senior Planner, and with me today, you met Shauna Warner with Neighborhood Services. And also from the Planning Division, we have Ryan Levake, the Deputy Director in Planning, and Lucas Jensen, Planner 2 with the Planning Division. So the character area planning process. So what character areas are is unique areas in the city of Tempe. So we've got 8 of them currently, as you can see from this map. Diablo Double Butte is number 2 on that map, shown in that gray hatched area. So as you can see by the colors and logos, this one's the last one that we're working on. So once we get through this process this year, every part of Tempe will have their own character area plan, which is great. But these plans aren't set in stone, and we do intend to come back periodically and revisit them. So that probably will start later this year with some other areas, and then once this particular plan has existed for a while, we'll probably come back around to it as well, give it some updates. So here's another look at that area. So character area 2 generally is the areas on the west side of Tempe. So you can see on the west side there, bordering the city of Phoenix along the 143 freeway and 48th Street, down to the Highline Canal as it goes around the Arizona Grand. And then it kind of jogs up along I-10 in the US 60 and then goes up Priest, and then over along Southern up to the Union Pacific Railway and up to Broadway to capture that industrial district known as the Makers District in Tempe. And then north along Priest, with the exception of the Linden Park neighborhood, as you can see there. So what are the character areas? So these were an idea that came up through the city's general plan process. They were created as an idea in the general plan 2040, a little over 10 years ago. So this is an excerpt from the recently ratified general plan 2050 that describes what these character areas are. So these are the areas in Tempe that are containing common design, land use, and commercial characteristics that are distinct from neighboring areas. So these are areas with similar age of housing, styles of architecture, patterns of development, materials, land use, or streets, lot size, landscaping, landmarks, and other physical attributes and barriers. So what character area plans are and how they help us and you as the community. They're high level, they're vision and policy documents. So they're not regulatory in the sense like a zoning code might be, and there's a slide later that'll get into a little bit more detail on that. But they provide policy and vision to help guide decisions that we'll make in the area. They also provide a background and history of the area. There's going to be a section of the plan that'll detail that. We do a visual survey and identify defining features. And then as mentioned, there's going to be these principles that we'll use when reviewing new developments or making decisions in the area. One thing about these plans is they're consistent with other city plans and objectives, and they're based on consultation and collaboration. So that's why we're having public meetings to kind of get that vision, talk about priorities, and really make it a plan that is designed by you, the community stakeholder. So the purpose of these plans is to provide the community with their own design guidelines and principles that match with your perspective and your context. So these will provide a reference for developers and other stakeholders when they come to do business in this part of the city of Tempe. And also really important for us in the city planning department is that we reference these documents when reviewing new applications for redevelopment, improvements on sites, and then also it's used to help decide where to guide investment in the future. And then, as mentioned before, all of these things are going to be working together with other adopted city plans, performance measures, and goals to help push us towards the way that the city as a whole has a vision for. So we've gone over the scope, the high-level vision, non-regulatory, but a policy plan. We're talking about a vision. What do you feel like the area needs to be in the future? What do you want it to look like? How do you want to feel like? What are those defining traits through history, qualities, and design or land use patterns, landscaping, and materiality? We'll go into the design principles and guidelines. That's going to be a big part of a character area plan, is getting into really the details about what do we want new development or new investment to look like in the area. And then along with that are those public realm principles. So those are things that'll relate, to shade, to transportation, to the design and quality of buildings, anything that we can do to enhance and improve the public realm. So what's not included in the scope of a character area plan, we're not looking at land use or the density of development. So those things are going to come from the city's general plan. So those won't be changed. Neither will zoning. This is not a document that's going to affect any zoning or private property rights. Another aspect that a character area does not regulate is anything having to do with businesses and what's allowed, what's not allowed, or residences. So things like, prohibiting rentals or short-term rentals. Those types of things fall into jurisdiction of regulatory documents, things like the Tempe Zoning and Development Code or the Tempe City Code. And along with that, code compliance, if there's an illegal building or something's not kept well, there's other mechanisms to deal with that. It's not in the scope of the character area plan. Same thing with public safety or any issues relating to homelessness. There's other avenues and policy documents that deal with those facets of the area. So here's a diagram that shows what kind of influencing factors we're looking at when we design these types of plans. So of course, we're going to look at the demographics and the built environment. So things like the housing type, single family, multifamily, is there condos, is there townhomes? We'll look at the neighborhoods, and that's a combination of not only the demographic information, which we'll get into in a little bit, but also looking at employment. So particularly for this character area, you'll see that there's a lot of industrial and employment type users in the area. We also look at things like the schools in the area, what type of transit amenities are available, including things like cycling and walking, as well as our local circulator orbit bus. We also look at the general plan as stated before. Even though this plan and that plan have different purposes, there's a lot of interconnectedness with the types of principles and objectives that we're looking to get out of them. And then we look at things relating to the community and the economy of the area. So again, what's already on the ground in terms of employment, but also what types of interest, that we might get in the future, the outlook of development in the area, as well as what types of things are already here, what types of businesses, like what type of restaurants and so forth. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, there's a lot of other plans in the city that all serve their own purpose, but there's a lot of connectedness between them. So of course, one of those is the city's entire comprehensive plan, General Plan 2050. The other character areas, so those are the other 7 that have been completed over the last 10 years. Although they are particularly about, whichever portion of Tempe that they're looking at, there's a lot of overlap because at the end of the day, we're all still Tempe and there's a lot of principles that apply across the board. Things like the city's affordable housing strategy or our forestry master plan, a transportation master plan, which they're updating in progress, climate action, Parks and Rec, and then really specifically for this area, we adopted design guidelines for the Tempe Maker District, which is that square mile between Broadway Southern and Priest and the railroad tracks. So that area already has its own design guidelines, but we'll look to see as part of this character area plan where we can build upon those and incorporate them into this plan as well. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Lucas Jensen, who's going to talk about some of the demographic information and visual survey of the character area.
Well, thank you, Jacob. Lucas Jensen, I'm a planner too at the city. We're going to start talking about some of the demographics, which is kind of how we start looking at these character areas when we first begin, is by kind of looking at the demographics, employment, and kind of some other physical and visual characteristics that we see right when we start to look at it. The demographics between Tempe and the character area too racially are very similar. Would say slightly more white population in character area too. This is about 10,000 out of the 180,000 residents. So it's a fairly smaller residential portion of Tempe, comparatively speaking, to the rest of the city. Other demographics we look at are kind of the size. So it's about 10% of the city in terms of square mileage. Again, 11,000 of the population in Tempe. Does have a slightly older median age. So it does look like there might be a slightly older or aging population in this portion of Tempe. Very similar median income, and then very similar numbers when you look at educational attainment and then ownership and renter opportunities in the character area. We also look at the employment data that we get from the Maricopa Association of Governments. This character area, like Jacob noted, is highly industrial and commercial. It does have a lot of employment and industry going on in there. Three of the top or largest employers look like ABM Industries, the Maricopa County Community College District, and then Amazon. So you see a lot of manufacturing, warehouse, and healthcare users in this area. And then we're going to take a look at a few of the images that we've collected over the time. In the center there, you'll see, the I-10 freeway. That's kind of the main boundary of this character area is the 143, and then you have the 10 freeway running right through there. You'll have the Niels Peterson house in the bottom left-hand corner, one of our Tempe historic homes down there on Priest and Southern. Some of the other characteristics we see here are those industrial or commercial buildings throughout. You'll see some of the street front landscaping that we have for some of these. It looks like there's some very mature trees and good tree canopy in some of those areas. And then in the bottom right, you'll see kind of some of the single family characteristics you see in the southern portion of the character area. And then a few other traits and points of interest. As noted, that Peterson House is one of the historic properties in Tempe. You also have the Tempe Diablo Stadium, Belle Butte, and then again, as Jacob mentioned, the Tempe Maker District, which already does have its own distinct guidelines that we'll be looking at and incorporating some of that into this plan as well, and then the Fountainhead Corporate Park. Other traits and characteristics include the I-10 and the freeways. This is a major thoroughfare area, those large industrial parks, and then you do see some single-family neighborhoods, apartments, condos, and townhomes kind of scattered throughout that south portion of the character area.
All right, thank you, Lucas. So the next question, the next section that we'll get into is to provide, they're more rhetorical questions, but really what we're attempting to do is to get you thinking in the way of the character area and kind of help start that process of letting us know what kind of vision and priorities that you have moving forward for us in this process. So, get to thinking about what physical, social, or geographic traits in this area that really set it apart from other places in Tempe. What elements need to be preserved, enhanced, changed, maybe added or taken out in order to improve the area. How would you rate the availability of affordable housing and the opportunity to age in place? As Lucas said, we're looking at a place where maybe the population is getting older, especially as relation to the city of Tempe as a whole. What's the state of infrastructure? We're talking about, roads, sidewalk, water infrastructure. If you had to think of like a single most important thing that you would want to change or to see in the future, what would it be? What's the single most important thing that you might want to avoid seeing in your area in the future? So with that, we'll go over the next steps and timeline, and then we will open it up for some discussion. So we're right now in our very first engagement portion of this project. So as you can see, we're right at that very first dot on the left-hand line where we're having this engagement. So there's this meeting today at noon, and then we're going to be in person at the Tempe History Museum this evening at 6 p.m. So following that, we'll be looking to have a second public meeting where we'll probably do the same thing, a virtual and an in-person one in February. And then as we move into March, we're looking to have kind of a focus group or a mixer with the business community, seeing as there's a big employment sector here in the area, before we visit some of the city's boards and commissions for their feedback. And then really by, April is when we'll get into the creation of the draft plan. So then we'll enter our second phase where we'll be in the drafting portion. We plan to release an initial draft of the Character Area 2 in May. And then once we do that, we will return to you, the community, with another public meeting to review that draft. And from those input opportunities, we will have a revised version out. And then as we move into the late summer, that's when we'll begin our public hearing process to get this plan adopted. So that's going to be a recommendation from the city's Development Review Commission, and then an adoption by the City Council, most likely sometime in August. So right now in our first comment period, we do have a survey open online. Please, if you haven't already, go to tempe.gov/forum and take that survey. It really helps us a lot to get as much information as we can from the community stakeholders as to how we're going to shape this plan. So that's open through February 10th. And with that, we'll go ahead and open it up for any questions or discussions that everyone might have.
And please feel free to put questions in the chat, or you can come off mute, raise a hand, any of those work. David, yes.
Yeah, I really wish we were working on something like a density bonus program today. All of these character area plans have become exact copies of the last character area plan. They're all identical to the general plan. They all have the 20-minute city. They all have green infrastructure. They all have aging in place. They're all uniform standard. If there was anything that did make our areas unique, it doesn't conform to the city's standards. So like with the Alameda character area, we're supposed to have green alleyways, but we're not allowed to have green alleyways because the city doesn't like that. We're supposed to improve connectivity, but the city made it illegal to walk through an alleyway. So all of these character area plans have just been creating a uniform standard across the entire city. And if I were to remove the name from the plans, you wouldn't be able to tell them apart from each other, and you wouldn't be able to tell them apart from the general plan.
So David, I'll talk a little bit about the similarity, and then if Lucas or Ryan has anything to add, they can hop in. But yeah, as mentioned before, there is a lot of overlap between the character area plans and even like you said, to the point of about mobility, about aging in place. Those themes are present in all, or at least most, of the character area plans, where we really try to get down to a specific area level is with principles. So while there might be an aging in place section in each of the character area plans, the section in this plan, if that's what we hear from public, might be more intricate with more detail as to how we want to accomplish that. And we do even eventually get to sometimes, very site specific things like, where it might be a good place to look at doing a pedestrian signalized crossing. And we'll get, into the detail of exactly where that might be the most important to place. So yes, there's overlap between the plans, but we do you know, what we can and where we can to be as specific as possible in order to be the most impactful, based on the feedback that we hear from the community and based off what we know about the demographics and what we know about the existing state of infrastructure. And like you said, you know, there's things in the character area plan that we aren't looking at doing because it's not in the scope. We can't be changing, you know, things in the zoning code. We can't be amending the general plan as part of this process. So a lot of times these things have ripples, right? Where, especially from longer range planning documents, where you would put something in there and then down the line is where you work it into regulatory guidelines in the future. So I hear what you're saying and I understand, but for the scope of what a character area plan is, those things have to either be, you know, set in motion through plans like this, or, you know, just contemplated as a future, you know, revision to whatever it is that we're looking for.
Yeah, Jacob, thank you very much. I do want to add too that one thing unique about this particular character area as well is that we've got the Tempe Maker District located within this area. And that effort, that area had an opportunity to explore specific, unique design guidelines to conversion or adaptive use of the industrial sites over there on that square mile of Broadway and Priest. And so that'll be an aspect of this process that this will get incorporated into, maybe even opportunities to enhance that that directive even further. But those two plans and guidelines will help basically become a part of the effort working together on looking at placemaking and design guidelines. I do appreciate your constructive criticism on the processes, but like Jacob said, there's a lot of guidance to focusing on the elements found in the general plan. But if there's any other areas of opportunities or uniqueness within this area, please let us know. Maybe there's something that we've missed, that there's an opportunity. I think a lot of what we try to hone in on is identifying those unique places like historic sites or like areas where there really is an opportunity to celebrate what the city has within these locations, and then what can we build upon that would help enhance it.
I know in practice that this hasn't really been happening because the Alameda character area already had the green alleyways and the connectivity, but then the city made it illegal. There's things like we're supposed to have parklets, but that never happened. So any of these policies are not being informed by the character area plans.
We can certainly get into those specific ones with the other character areas, but I guess for this one, I don't know if we're going to be talking about parklets or green alleyways, but there'll be a lot of emphasis and discussion about our aging infrastructure, these commercial sites, and especially there's a large industrial swath that exists along the I-10 corridor area here that will be a larger emphasis. I know there's a smaller amount of neighborhoods in here, or there's small clusters of neighborhoods that are specific to those areas, which we'll be focusing in on as well.
Were there other questions either in the chat, or please feel free to come off mute? Okay, not seeing any. I'm going to go ahead and put the direct survey link in the chat. And then, as Jacob said, we will be in person tonight at the Tempe History Museum over at Rural and Southern. If you'd like to come speak to us and meet us in person, we will be there as well. If you want to invite neighbors. And the survey will be open through February 10th. Was there anything else, Jacob, to wrap up?
Nope, I think you got it. This is our contact information, and then also, if you can't remember our names, or if you don't lose the slide, but we also have a CharacterAreas@tempe.gov email, which might be a lot easier to remember.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you.